Franklin County Commissioners meeting, April 10th, 2018. Franklin County Commissioners meeting, April 10th, 2018.
Good morning. It is Tuesday, April 10th, 2018, and this is the regular weekly meeting of the Franklin County Board of Commissioners. We have looks like a little longer than usual agenda this morning, and Mr. Mahoney is on his way. But at this time, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Myself, Commissioner Peck, and Commissioner Cook are here. Commissioner Miller is out of town on county business. And joining us, of course, is County Administrator Keith Johnson. At this time, I ask you, if you care to, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Just a note of explanation here. Historically, we have placed our approval of minutes on the consent agenda and had commissioners sign those. Some training that Karen has attended and some research we've done shows that that's really not necessary. In fact, we can simply address that the meetings are committed to paper, they're a legal record, and then call for any additions, deletions, changes, or concerns. So at this time, Commissioner Cook, do you have any additions, deletions, concerns?
For approval of minutes for April 3rd.
Okay. I'll go ahead and second. It is only necessary to call for concerns, and then they can stand as approved without a vote. I'm happy to take a vote as well. Either way is perfectly fine. So we have a motion and second for approval. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. And that is a bit of a change of how we've done things in the past. Sorry for not briefing that ahead of time. Okay, moving on. Next item is grant authority for the treasurer to sell tax title properties. Mr. Johnson, who would you care to have join us for this discussion?
I see that the treasurer and deputy treasurer Whitney are all here. We'll then decide how they want to present this.
Ms. Johnson, you and I had a brief conversation yesterday in which I expressed that the only real concern I saw with this was the possibility that we might actually move to sell properties without board involvement. The board might have some other interest unseen other than financial interest that the treasurer's office wouldn't be aware of. So if we could address that in the conversation, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely.
As you stated here, that these properties that I am asking to request a grant authority to sell, these properties on the foreclosure, they have did not receive a minimum bid, and so for 2017. So other than the fiscal impact, some of these properties are undesirable because they're not big enough to build on, the shape of the size that they are, and the zoning, that they're not zoned for maybe residential.
Excuse me, when you say these properties, are you talking about specific properties or properties in general?
Well, I'm talking about these specific properties.
Maybe I missed it in the reading ahead. I didn't see a listing of specific properties.
I sent you one through an email yesterday.
Yeah, I didn't see that. Okay. So the agenda summary report doesn't have a list of specific properties. That's why I understood it to be a request for recurring ongoing.
It is a request for recurring. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So just an example for 2017. This list here that I've given you, it states that there's 2 properties in Pasco, and there's a map that goes along with them. and it gives the minimum bid, and that there was no bid and the taxes that were owed. And on these properties, it tells you the size of these properties that they are, the size of the property is. What I've noticed in the past with some of these properties that don't go for sale is that Franklin County takes them as a tax title property, and then we incur cost associated with them to maintain them or an additional liability. And so I'm just asking that I have the permission you grant me the permission to sell them as a bid for the previous 12 months from the auction at the minimum bid price.
Okay, well, based in part on this new information, I've got several questions. I'll defer to Commissioner Cook before I...
No, I had questions yesterday morning when they opened the ASR, and through the day we got those answered, so thank you.
Okay. So Keith, you and I spoke about 10 o'clock yesterday morning, and I had not heard or seen anything since then, so this is new information for me. I'll start with, Josie, some of these parcels show as 0.08 acres. I'm assuming that that's correct. It's not 0.8, it's 0.08. So these are not buildable lots. They're so small.
That's correct.
And so the likelihood of the county having any interest in those is nil. And obviously they would have more value to the adjacent property owners than they likely would to the county. So ones that are non-conforming and not legally buildable, those kinds of things, I wouldn't have any concern about. You simply selling those whenever and however you can to recover as much as you can for the county. On the more substantial and buildable ones, I'm open to having you educate me and change my mind, but I'm still inclined to say that I don't think that we ought to be putting those out, selling those for minimum value without that rolling back through the county, because the commissioners sometimes are aware of information that maybe your office isn't, and I think it needs to be a team decision between your office and the treasurers, not one or the other. So I would still be inclined not to do that on a recurring basis. If it's non-conforming, if it's not legally buildable, those kinds of things, that's different. Does that seem like a reasonable position to you?
Mr. Beck, if I may interject really quickly, I think our intention was to move to a point where we would strictly go and sell these properties without having a discussion with the board. I think what you bring up is a really great point, and one of the nice things is we do keep a running list prior to these even going to auction, and then post-auction, which is posted on the treasurer's website, it kind of lets us know what's coming down the pipeline. And so we could be having discussions regarding these properties before the auction, before they even end up in the county's hands, what our intentions would be if we ended up with them. I think one of the main reasons that we're looking for this avenue is we're in a place right now where we accept requests maybe for properties, and those requests are very few. We don't have a lot of people coming after the auction requesting about these properties. So the county ties up in the 2017 year and 2018 year, for example, we tie up about $1,150 per parcel between advertising costs, court fees, and services, which we end up not recouping unless that property sells. As you're aware, there's many properties that we hold that have been on our books for 30, 40, 50 years. What we're hoping to do with the conversation
I know
report.
that lately there's been some that we've been giving away, some that we've been selling. When I say giving, to other municipal organizations, fire districts and the like.
Correct. And so the hope is this gives us an avenue of starting to stockpile some of these properties, which are pieces, which really do have a benefit to the adjacent owners, or if they are buildable lots that would have sold at our previous foreclosure auction for that minimum bid. And I think one of the purposes for that is to get those back out and knocked on the tax rolls.
Excuse me, it sounds like we're on the same page with respect to the non-conforming. What's your view on the ones that are conforming, that have structures on them, that have homes? What's your thinking on those?
Sure. Very similar along the same lines. With the fact that what you mentioned is there may be added value to the county, which the board's properties, which the treasurer's office is not. And so I think that the discussion through the foreclosure process before we even end up with these properties, that we should be having these conversations with you saying we have several lots in Elpida, may not be zoned correctly for the public to be interested in. Are we okay with this if these don't sell? We contact adjacent owners. Maybe you build a lot, maybe the value to somebody. At that point, I think the board has the ability to kind of give us your perspective and your thoughts. And I can't speak for Jesse, but I believe everybody would be very respectful to those ideas. We're trying to do what's best for the county through your direction.
Yeah, and I think we're all on the same page there. I'm glad you mentioned zoning too, because some of these properties may have significantly more value if the zoning is proper, and certainly the board has the capacity to adjust zoning. So if we've got properties that are undervalued simply because of the zoning issue, that's the kind of thing that we might highlight. We'd hate to find out that it was sold through a sort of a routine disposal process and find out later that it actually had the potential for the citizens to recover a lot more value if we had simply rezoned it. Or in the case of the parcel we looked at a week or two ago on the other side of on East Lewis there, that's nearby two parcels that are owned by the city, and the potential for the city to have a strong interest in that and for the community to benefit from it is real. And outside of that discussion in here, that's a parcel that you might have just routinely sold to recover what we could. So those are a couple of examples of times when I think it's important to have a team approach to looking at it. So with respect to the ones that we've got here today, I don't see the parcel sizes on this sheet, so maybe...
No, they're on the map.
Right, I'm just looking to correlate what's on this list with which one is which in the map. So maybe I see there's parcel numbers on a number of them. We've got one that ends in 1027.
Here's my map.
Which one is that? Oh, okay. It's got the information on it. Okay, so 0.11. Tell you what, rather than trying to interpret your notes, why don't you just hold up the map and show you which one is first?
1027 is that triangle.
Okay. Which one do you have to see? There's
Here,
1027.
do you want to just look at my map? They're more.
No, I'm good. If you just describe it, and people that are listening can have the benefit of knowing as well.
Okay,
So the one that ends in 1027 is the 0.11 acres,
yes.
and it says Lewis Place.
So it's this map right here.
Right, it's this triangle right
Yep.
down here, and it's in Pasco.
Yes.
This is a good example of one. If you look at how the adjacent property across the street is laid out, what this parcel encompasses is part of the roadway. Had it been originally mapped correctly or deeded correctly or mature part of the road, this parcel would actually be much smaller. So you're not going to get access to own a piece of the roadway. But this is a lot of times what we end up with.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what we were just talking
Yeah.
about, non-conforming, not usable, not necessarily legal. So where is this on Lewis? It's quite a ways east, or is this just off of Oregon?
It's with the North Acre Ave. That's the best description I can give you without a larger map.
I'm trying to recognize it.
Which is what on the whole scheme of things were.
It's east of Oregon
East of-
Avenue.
I believe so.
Yeah, it's 2501 East Lewis. Okay. Well, anyway, I don't have any concern with you disposing of that one, Mr. Cook.
No.
Yes, you don't either. Okay, let's move on. Let's get to the next one. This is Lot 17, Block 4. Which one is that, please?
So it's going to be Owen Avenue.
Okay. And is that 328 or 324 or both of them?
It's the little line right across through here.
It's just a strip down the middle.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have a problem in getting rid of that one. Commissioner Cook?
Oh.
Okay. What about parcel of land located in the southwest quarter of? That says sold already, so we can disregard that?
Yes.
Okay. Lot 1, again, second edition.
This is Evelyn Heights.
Okay, got it. 0.22 acres.
Yes.
Okay, so that's about a quarter acre that's potentially usable, and we would want to dispose of that. How? What would you recommend?
This would be one of the situations where we would contact the adjacent landowners owning the lots to the south, and I believe that would be to the east.
Okay, this is off of 17.
Is that virtually landlocked, or can you tell from this? Yeah.
The photos are not real time, so we'd actually have to drive and look at that. Again, one of the reasons why we would offer them to the adjacent landowners, my understanding from the assessor's office, and if I'm wrong in this speaking, hopefully someone can correct me, if two adjacent landowners have both parcels and they have all the taxes paid, that they can combine those into a single parcel.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's actually a simple, single form, very, very quick, very easy. So, what's the history on this one? We put it up for auction, it didn't sell?
That's correct.
And anybody recall what the minimum bid was on the sheet here? I'm assuming $17.98.
That's correct.
And the taxes are $6.78, and the fees are $11.20, and that's how we get to $17.98. And you would propose selling this how at this point?
For the minimum bid purchase. So it'd be $17.98.
Okay. And are these on here because someone has come forward and said we'd like to buy them for the minimum, or are you looking to advertise them at the minimum?
Answer this one. Mind if I answer this one? The reason they're on this list is because there is we have a 12-month window that we can sell any property that did not sell at auction through. Yes.
At or above?
Yes, correct.
It's basically saying it's a latecomer's opportunity. If somebody missed the auction, they want to come in, no one else has bid on it, no one else has expressed interest, you can automatically sell it at that.
That is correct.
And that's the authority that you're looking for.
Correct.
And that circumstance wouldn't take place if you hadn't already come to the board once and gotten approval to auction it, right? Is that correct?
We don't come to the board for auction for foreclosure. It's set in statute after 3 full years of delinquent taxes. It automatically goes through the foreclosure process.
Okay, so you came to us the other day on a couple of parcels. How is that situation different than this one?
Those properties were outside the 12-month window, and we didn't have to go to the direct sale.
Oftentimes you bring them to us, and so I had captured the fact that, okay, so within the 12 months you can, outside that you can't. Commissioner Cook, you have a feeling as to whether you would want all these tax title parcels that are being sold, would you want the Treasurer's Office to come to us on all of those, or are you inclined to say if it's been within 12 months, go ahead and sell it?
Personally, I would like to see this print out prior to.
Okay, I think that's reasonable. I would agree with that too. All right.
Not necessarily I come through an ASR or something, but just, if you're going to put some on a minimum bid with the restoration.
Just a minute, give us a quick brief on what they are. Okay, so this 0.22 acres, 1798. All right. This 12-month window runs concurrent with the properties in a given auction. But are you doing more than one auction a year?
No, we did it in December.
Okay. So
Of
do you
last year.
typically do one a year?
Yes.
All right. The reason I ask is so that it tells me how many times we're going to see this. Basically, you run an annual calendar. Okay. All right. So why don't we run through the rest of these and quickly, if you give us just a quick history on them, then we can tell you whether or not there's any in here that we prefer to not sell and just approve them as a batch.
Do you want me to go?
I think I could save a little bit of time here. They're all 0.08, 0.07. There is one that is 0.16, but knowing the area that it's in, it backs up to a rough ground, and the parcel is so small you can't build on it. I think it's zoned commercially, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
So 162 is a 0.08. We've already covered some of the others.
The remaining parcels are all in Colorado, Washington, and they're all within, Eltopia, Washington, and they front to Seattle. And as Bob has mentioned, they are commercially zoned from what we've seen, and it shows buying multiple parcels and combining them together. They are very small parcels indeed.
Okay, so show me on the map what you're talking about, because I don't see Seattle Ave on any of these, and I don't know the area well enough to know. You're talking about all these small pieces.
Right. So if you're driving along Highway 395, this would be by the Green Towers, sure. Up here right off the highway.
Okay. So all of these, there's 0.16 acres, that's not buildable either, right? Parcel 3241.
I personally wouldn't be able to speak to that. I don't know if Joseph, you can.
Commercially, it would be. They could, somebody could bundle these three items together.
That is correct.
Yeah, I don't see a real county interest in that one. Do you, Mr. Cook?
I don't see any of these in Eltopia that, because of the way they're laid out.
Okay, so then we can agree that all these in Eltopia are fine if you sell them.
Okay.
That would round out the list.
Okay, so then this 200 Petra Court, and Lisa, this is just an identifier, it's not one of the parcels, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then we already talked about this remnant. Let's talk about, this is also just an identifier, it's not a parcel for sale?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So it doesn't sound like we have any concern with you selling these since you're within the 12-month window, and appreciate the efficiency that comes with that. It sounds like the board would still like to have you at least come and run us through the list of what you're looking to sell, show us what they look like, and at least give us the opportunity maybe to hold out a couple that we think have some other interest short of selling. Is that okay? Everybody good with that? All right, thanks so much. Matt's here. Come on, Matt.
We have a resolution.
Yeah, we do.
Move for approval of resolution 2018-097, authorization to sell tax title property within the 12 months of the previous foreclosure.
Okay, second with discussion, I just want to be sure that this resolution is not an ongoing authority, but it's for these particular parcels.
Well, it is.
Okay, so I seconded, we can have discussion, but my preference would be that we rescind the motion and ask them to bring back a resolution that includes a requirement to run this past the board, because as I'm reading that, that's a blanket approval. So, Commissioner Cook, if you'd care to rescind the motion, or I can vote no, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, we can rescind it with the
Okay. So I think we have a good understanding of how we want to handle it. We just need an updated resolution. All right, thank you. Okay, morning, Mr. Mahoney. Sorry we're running a little behind here. This is initiating County Road Project 619, Project 618, Project 620, and I'm guessing you're also going to talk about a road name change to Fraser Drive?
Correct.
Okay, over to you.
Typically, as the board is very familiar, we would typically put some of these on the consent agenda, but these are new projects we're initiating on. They are safety projects. This was some new funding that we received, and so just kind of want to have a brief discussion and just point out the fact that the safety money that was available for us to submit for competitive funding was very pointed in what they were looking at for funding, and of that was flexible guidepost and rumble bars. We do have one more that we'll be submitting at a later date, but these are the types of projects that the states are utilizing or distributing this federal money have determined to be uses that they'd want to see. So I just wanted to point that out.
Is our match on these all the same, 10%?
Yeah, I do want to add, it's a little bit difficult to put in there, but if we get this constructed within a certain time frame, meaning getting into the construction phase, the construction portion is actually 100% with zero match from the county. So, and we, believe me, we do not miss those deadlines. So
all three items, Matt?
Just speaking to 619 and 618. I believe 620 is the same, but I don't want to commit to that because I'm not sure.
Matt, you distinguished the construction phase. Does that include or exclude the planning and engineering phase? Is that part of it?
That excludes it.
It excludes.
The planning and
So
engineering.
100% of the construction. And on the planning and engineering piece, do we cover all of that, or do we pay 10%?
10%.
Okay, so conceivably, we could pay 10% of the smaller piece if we do it quickly.
Yes, correct.
Perfect. Okay, I don't anticipate that there's any other questions there. I'm going to move those over to Commissioner Cook, and if you've got any questions on any of these, otherwise, motions would be in order.
I have not. I would move for approval of resolution 2018-98, 99, and 100 as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion for approval of 3 resolutions as a batch. Those would be 2018-98, 2018-99, 2018-100. And just for the sake of those listening in the future, 98 is Road Project 619, Safety Flexible Guidepost. Number 99 is Rumble Bars, Project 618. And Resolution 2018-100 is Project 620, the Haley Railroad Highway Crossing. So I'm happy to second the motion. Any other comments or discussions?
Ms. Haley is quite happy that there's nothing to take the bridge out.
Yes.
Good. Okay, hearing no other discussion, all in favor, please say aye for approval of those 3 resolutions. Aye. Okay, those are approved. Commissioner Cook, do you mind if we move on to Fraser Road while you sign those?
No, just about that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the board recalls, on February 27th, we brought this very issue to the board, and we had some good discussion with the board, and went back and, of course, had discussion internally with staff members. What we want to point out here, one of the things that was brought up was when we look at changing road names and the addressing that goes along with them is where should the addressing start? Where should be the point of beginning? And making sure that we do it right the first time so people don't have to change their addresses in the future. As we discussed, there's really no simple answer to that other than pointing directly to the county's existing ordinance, which says everything within the city limits is done through a grid system, and those that are outside. And
You know the obvious question, so why don't you go ahead and answer it?
Yes. So
what happens when that boundary moves? Because we all know it's going to.
Yes. So I guess this is kind of a two-part. One is what I can say is the addressing, we won't be able to fix the addressing component at this point, but changing the road name for the segment of road in particular is certainly an important factor here. And what I would ask the board is if it pleases them to go ahead and approve the name change for that segment of Fraser, from Fraser Drive to Fraser Road, and allow me to go back and continue my work with staff to continue to work on our existing ordinance, which would be done really working with CCOM too, and trying to come up with a really global addressing system, and so that we're not just looking at areas that can grow, can expand, that we're actually looking much broader than that and being proactive instead of reactive.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that path, or that stretch of road would start at Burns Road and go north?
That's right now where we're starting the addressing at. Of course, this is a good 2 miles north of that starting point.
So should we be looking at, since we're addressing off of Burns and what is now known as Dent, should we not be looking at renaming it also from Burns north?
Yeah, they will be looking to do that as well.
Okay. And we're doing those as separate actions just because we want more staff time to work out the details and get the addressing done now.
There's a couple things. We're looking at submitting that segment of Dent Road for some TIP funding, and getting that done, and we think that would be a good time to do it. There are a couple that are,
All right, so there's a reason.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Mr. Cook, any other questions?
Yeah, but
Do you recall seeing any kind of a request for a name change to Bear Road, which runs north-northwest off of Dent?
Yes,
You working on that?
yes, we are.
Great. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would move for approval of resolution 2018-054 and the road, name change Fraser Drive to Fraser Road.
Second, so we have a motion second for approval of 2018-054, which is the name change for Fraser Drive to Fraser Road. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's approved. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Anything else for the board while you're here?
I would like to let the board know we've been kind of talking about it. I do have the final packet from the final landowner on the Juniper Dunes access sitting on my desk that I'm reviewing, and hope to be getting all of those documents recorded this week and getting the final check out to Premier Partners. So it's quite a huge file, and I started going through it yesterday when it was laid on my desk, so I'll get through that and get everything recorded.
And as you know, man, I occasionally jump in my rig and go driving out through the county just looking at roads. And last night I drove out past Nest Place in the PK Highway and then out Murphy out to the river. And I don't know who's maintaining that, but Murphy is really nice. I mean, it's in really good shape, and a lot of the connecting roads down there where the Stemilt orchards are all in great shape too. So whoever's doing that, tell them kudos, nice job.
Appreciate it. Let them know.
And also, let's see, what was the other thing I wanted to mention to you from out there? Yeah, I think that was it. Just that it was, some of those roads out there that are kind of out of sight, out of mind, especially this time of year. We're not that far from cherry harvest, and you load those trucks, you run them down a washboard road. It doesn't help the product any. So appreciate you taking care of that. Commissioner Cook, anything else for?
Any further on our Lotus properties?
The property that currently the county shop sits on, I've got to call into DOT, and it's actually their Spokane office, and they're trying to find information for me. What we do know is that used to be a DOT shop and land. What we don't know is how the county ultimately got it. We don't know if the state turned it over to the county, if there was, for $1 or what it was. We can't find anything internally. I've been tirelessly going through past records, commissioner records. So my last resort, I've talked to even past employees. I've called as many past employees that I can think of that might have some memory of that. All of them are saying the same thing. It used to be a Washington State Department of Transportation outpost, and the county got it. Nobody's really sure. So I have called WashDOT and waiting. They're on it. They're trying to find what they can.
Okay. Talking about just the building or the parcel? Or
The building and the parcel. Yeah, and that's the northern parcel. There's two parcels there. One is a tax title property.
The southern one is a tax title.
Correct.
Okay. I would think Pete's office would have the history on that. It's a parcel in Colotus. Maybe you could.
The overall number sheet to check.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. The other thing I wanted to mention was that the route to the new Juniper Dunes Road runs under that power line. And I'd always been under the impression that the dirt road that runs under the northern part of that power line extended all the way to the PK, and I was surprised last night when I drove out there to see that it actually doesn't. I also noted that it's a pretty significant hill or rise right there.
Yes.
And we're still planning to knock down that elevation and make a more gradual slope.
Yes.
So that you've got a decent sight distance, because otherwise that'd be a dangerous turnout.
Where we first come off of the PK is actually a little bit, would be a little bit east or west of where you would think, that section line.
Right.
And then we kind of curve around, so.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have, and we'll be knocking that down, and there's also a nice little crater there too. That will,
Right, yeah. Is the road right there with the power line, or is it a little bit offset?
I
because I'm pretty sure that the power line is in an easement that runs between those circles.
Yes, they will actually be on the west side of the power lines.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next on our agenda this morning is Greater Columbia Behavioral Health discussion with Kyle Sullivan, our Human Services Director. Good morning, Kyle.
Good morning. Catch you off guard after being gone last week and not having an opportunity to be at the Greater Columbia meeting Thursday.
Well, my understanding was there was a discussion about it. I assume this is regarding the CJTA funds, and my understanding is there was a discussion about it Thursday at the meeting, which unfortunately I wasn't there.
Well, this is Commissioner Cook's expertise, so I'm going to listen.
Basically, have you talked to somebody over there since you got home? Or?
Yeah, I spoke with Joel, and I was forwarded, or I had a chance to read the letter. It's not working?
It isn't.
Try the button.
And the county was used to manage these contracts prior to April 1st of 2016, when it was part of the SUD contracts that we had, and I know my understanding, and Pat may be able to comment to it, is I know that the drug courts used to receive some CJTA money to help support their program. I don't know how much that was, but when integration in April 2016 came, the BHO wasn't, and all the contracts went to the BHO. They weren't able to contract with the drug courts because they weren't a service provider, and so that funding stream for them disappeared.
You say for them, you mean for drug court?
Yes. Yeah. And so, to be honest with you, this letter and the conversation that I had with Karen last week was the first that I'd heard that the state was giving the counties essentially the right of first refusal as to whether or not they wanted to manage that fund again. There's a degree of work that goes in with that as well, in terms of reporting requirements and monitoring and whatnot. Right.
So, excuse me, Kyle, that fund currently has an amount of money. I don't remember the number. It's not huge. And this is essentially a closeout maneuver, or do we see more money coming into that fund from the state before this is over?
No. It's just the state is offering the counties the ability to manage those funds moving forward. I haven't heard that those funds are disappearing. It would
thought under the new
option to self-manage for a 10% ad fee.
Right.
The number that's there is 61K or something like that.
Yeah, so it's not a huge number.
What's the annual monetary flow through that account then?
I believe it's about 61,000 for Franklin County.
61,132
per year.
Per year. And it goes towards, and currently there's one provider in our network that has those funds directed to them as merit. And my understanding is that there are restrictions on what you can use those funds for, and there have been some agencies that have had previously, all the agencies that provide SUD services in our community had access to those funds, but what we found is that there were agencies just simply weren't using them. And
what kind of services did you call?
Substance use disorder. It's the old acronym for CD, chemical dependency.
I know
But
what it is, but people listening don't.
okay, and so what had ended up happening is that we weren't spending the money on the services, and they were using other funds to provide those services where some of the CJTA dollars could have gone toward, and Merit's done a good job using those funds for the services that they're intended for. My understanding in talking with Joe at the BHO yesterday is that they're going to be opening up some of those. There will be more services that they can use for those moving forward with some of the changes in the law, with providing substance use disorder evaluations and detentions and under the ITA, Involuntary Treatment Act laws.
So what happens when the BHO goes away?
Well, right now, there's talk. One of two things will happen. Either the BHO will become an ASO, Administrative Service Organization.
That's only for crisis, right?
That's only for crisis services.
I don't know if you can use substance use disorder for that.
They can't. They will be able to manage those contracts. As I said, those monies can be used for services associated with the Involuntary Treatment Act. So if someone gets, they can, if someone is evaluated and deemed detainable. For ITA.
It just seems like if it went to the ASO that they'd be able to use it for some things, but not as broadly as the BHO has done.
Well, what would likely happen is that they would continue to contract with Merit, and Merit would be again, there are some changes with substance, with detentions, and so currently Lourdes is operating a crisis unit, and so there may be availability of funding for Lourdes to access some of those where they hadn't previously.
So you see it saying with the current BHO, or going to the ASO, or even a possibility it could go to Human Services, could be administered by any of those. Is there any risk, based on which of those we choose, is there any risk in this just being taken up by an MCO at the state level when we get to that point in 2020?
I don't believe so. We're primarily going to focus on Medicaid.
And they're largely private, so.
Yeah, and so this is state funding.
So out of those three, what do you recommend, the BHO, the ASO, or your office?
Well, I think the BHO will either become ASO or disappear at the end of this year, and so I think it will either be essentially the ASO or my office. Initially, my inclination was to just recommend that it would be status quo and continue with the ASO.
Well, the BHO is going to go away. It's not going to become an ASO. I mean, it will cease to exist. Now, we might stand up an ASO, and it might have a lot of the same players in it, but I don't think you can just convert one into the other.
Correct. The BHO will dissolve at the end of the year, and there's talk about forming an ASO out of similar parts.
Right.
And at that other MOU.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So, not to parse this too fully or too far, but I think we probably have as clear a vision about what an ASO is going to look like as any of these pieces, because it's fairly narrowly defined. We've already got a provider in place. Would you rather see these funds managed, looking down the road, because we don't want to do this multiple times, by an ASO or by your office?
Again, I think my initial inclination was that it would make sense for it to remain with the ASO. Now, I know Pat sent me, or I was CC'd on an email from Pat yesterday.
Sorry, did you mean remain with the BHO?
Yes. Yeah. And
in your mind, you've already blended the two, obviously.
Apologize for that. And so Pat had some questions about setting up a meeting to discuss the possibility of the drug court accessing some of those funds again. So I would have a conversation with her about that.
Which vehicle makes them most available to drug court? It seems like it might be your office.
It would be. I think that would be probably the only way that they would have access to those funds. Again, they're not a service provider, so I don't think that they could be in. And again, I don't know moving forward. Yeah, I would need to look more into that again. I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance because I was gone last week.
Well, based on what you know now, are you inclined to recommend that it stay with the BHO, and then when that closes down, we make a decision then where the funds go, maybe to an ASO, maybe your office, or do you think we should just go ahead and tag your office now to manage these going forward?
Again,
or some other option?
Yeah, with the knowledge that I have right now and looking into it a little bit further, that may change, but my recommendation right now would be for it to remain with the BHO. And Commissioner Cook, I don't know if there was there a discussion about this at the meeting?
Quite lengthy.
Okay.
And everybody is in the same thought process as you are at this point. Leave it with the BHO, and they've got the expertise and the contract raters.
Okay.
And, there's not a large amount of revenue there.
Right.
So like I say, it's a 10% ad fee out of 61,000, it's not going to go very far for an employee to handle it in
Right.
an office.
What services is Merit providing there?
As a total, or with CJTA funds?
Under the CJTA funds.
My understanding is that it pays for UAs, it pays for transportation to and from treatment. It can pay for some outpatient treatment if a person isn't Medicaid eligible. And outside that, I'd have to have a conversation with Dave Wilson, who's the director of Merit.
Okay. Well, I certainly see that the clean and simple approach is just leave it like it is. But I'm really attracted to the notion that the drug courts are run by the courts, and it's pretty attractive, the notion that the funds could potentially be available to the courts for the drug court programs.
Sure.
It's very similar to these services, and I see Pat's here. Anything you want to add?
Yes, the monies I'm speaking of, that 10% admin fee, the counties receive that in the past to offset the costs of the drug court. It's not a lot of money, like Commissioner Cook has stated, and we are currently referring a good portion of our participants to Merit.
Okay.
And they're providing the services that you need available. So the drug court participants are gaining benefits from those funds through their treatment, but the county's not receiving back that revenue to offset their contribution to the drug court.
That's a good clarification, thank you. That actually answered about 3 questions in one. Okay. So really the only thing we're losing here is that the 10%, the 6,000 is not going to the counties, it's going to the DHO.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Cook, I take it your recommendation is just leave it as is. Okay. I'm going to defer to the guy who's been our BHO, Greater Columbia, everything else for as long as I've been here. I'll just go with his recommendation and leave it where it is.
Okay.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate
Thanks.
the education.
You bet.
Okay, we're actually about a minute and a half ahead of schedule despite that discussion, which is good. That means that Karen's doing a fabulous job of allocating time for these topics. So next item is public comment. Anybody that wishes to meet with the board and discuss any topics of county interest. This is one of 2 opportunities. Another one will be at the end of the meeting at 10:20. Morning, Mr. Didier.
Good morning. Thank you. I want to thank you guys for putting the audio on my phone. Now, I thank you very much, but I'm curious as to why there's an expiration date and it's eliminated after so much time. Why is it deleted? Anybody care to answer?
I can respond to that if you.
I'd care to answer if I knew the answer.
It's simply a matter of storage space on the server. We can make we do have a permanent recording available if somebody needs it beyond that expiration date. And if we need to extend the expiration date, could probably do that, but
And I know you're sending it to my wife's email, which is fine, she forwards it to me, but how does the rest of the public get the means to hear the audio if they so choose?
we can send that to them as well.
They have to request it.
Right now, yes, but we're working on technology to put it actually on the website.
That would be best.
Yeah, I agree.
That way everybody can tune in, because I noticed today you guys are following the agenda as is printed out, but last week in the audio, I noticed that you guys talked about redoing the commissioner lines and redistricting our county. Is there any maps out there of what you have plans for here? Because it got sort of put as an emergency status that it needed to be done.
Well, I'll speak to that. I don't think anybody referred to it as emergency status. We would refer to the heading on all of our agendas that say that discussion items may be added, deleted, or modified. We only do that when there's an item that comes up after the agenda has been produced and submitted. As for commissioner districts, the statutes direct that we do 3 districts that are as evenly divided as possible. And I think any reasonable interpretation of the statute means not just in the 1890s when the county was established, but on an ongoing basis. Last count, I think we're currently 14-15% difference between the largest district and the smallest. So, and the statute also says you can't redistrict more often than every 4 years. So it's been more than 4 years since we've redistricted. We're approximately 14-15% out of balance. So it makes redistricting lawful and appropriate. It doesn't make it essential or an emergency. The statute also says that redistricting only happens when all 3 commissioners are here, so you won't, even though we could discuss it today, you have to have all 3 commissioners to take any action. So I don't anticipate any discussion of it today, and of course there won't be any action on it today. Whether or not there's discussion or action in the future is up to the board.
It sounded to me as if there was a push to get this done before May 1st.
Well,
before the filing deadline. Is this correct?
I was here for the whole meeting. I don't know what other sources you're using besides the recording, but there was a discussion of should we, what's the current situation, what do the statutes say. I don't see that it's imperative beyond the board's desire to comply with the statutes, which say that they should be as equal as possible. Historically, in the time I've been here, and I think Commissioner Cook too, if we're a couple, 2, 3, even 4 percentage points out, that's generally regarded as just the normal flux of things. 14-15% is a pretty big delta.
So you're conflicting in your answer right there. You said 2, 3, 4 is, but now you're saying 4 and 5 is out of. Wow.
I don't think that's a conflict. The statute says they should be as nearly equally divided as possible, and I think there's intent there that you do it within reason. You don't redistrict when 5 people move into a district and you're suddenly 0.5% out. When it gets to 14-15%, I think it's incumbent for the board to take a look at it and say, is that enough that we think it warrants redistricting? And if so, what's a good timing to do it? I don't sense any great urgency from the board that it has to be done now or 6 months from now, but if there was an interest in doing it this time of year, it needs to be done so that there's at least a couple, 2, 3 weeks before the filing period, so people have time to see what the districts are. But again, the statute says as nearly equally divided as possible. I don't think it's realistic to redistrict every time you're a couple of points out. You can't redistrict more than every 4 years. It's been about 4.5 years since we've done it. And with the tremendous growth in District 3, which is the north central part of Pasco, we are decidedly out of balance between the districts. So it really comes back to what level of desire do we have to comply with the plain language of the RCW.
Okay, now, could you answer my question? Do you have a map put together at this point?
There are 1 or 2 draft working documents.
Can we see them?
They are draft working documents. I'll defer to the board. As you know, draft working documents have the potential to give an impression to the public that it is a proposal or a permanent document when it's not. And for that reason, draft working documents are excluded from the Public Records Act. I think you probably know that.
And also, there's only been 2 commissioners that have seen the map, the third one, so.
Well, that's right.
Yes,
So there is staff work that has been put into the effort. There's no formal proposal. There's no schedule for hearings on the matter, and public hearing is required before any changes could be made. What else can I tell you?
That there's a census this year, and I think we should wait until the census comes out to see where an accurate amount of population is located.
Well, I'll
Been a
take that as,
discussion also.
yeah, I'll take that as your
There's been
opinion.
a discussion also.
Yeah, the question is, what else can I tell you? I can't tell you that we should wait for the census, because the census will be done, but it'll be probably 12 to 18 months after that before we get the data. That, by my estimation, will put us probably about 6 years from our last redistricting. And those numbers, which are already clearly out of balance, 14-15%, is significant. I think if you were to poll other counties in the state or MRSC, I think they would tell you that when you get to that level of disparity, it is time to redistrict. But again, I don't have any great sense of urgency that we have to do this now. I raised the issue because as a chair, that's part of my administrative responsibility. I know what the statute says. I think we're out of compliance with the statute. I think it's time to start a discussion. How quickly the board wants to take action to deal with that is up to the board.
Is there going to be public input on the map before you vote on it?
There will be a public hearing, which is an opportunity for public input on any proposed redistricting, which would include maps.
With the filing date coming up for somebody to run, and I've heard names out there, if you redistrict it and they can't run for the position, I think that's an injustice. And I think you should wait until after the filing period to do any more discussion on this.
Well, I appreciate your opinion. I appreciate you coming in and sharing that. I would invite you to read in Gross Substitute Senate Bill 6002, which is titled Voting Rights, was passed by the 65th Legislature of the State of Washington in 2018. I would refer that reading to anyone who has an interest in this topic because it bears on this subject.
Where are you getting your number counts now from? Because I know there's a lot of houses being built out in the blocks.
Right.
And we better have an accurate account of the populace before you go changing lines. Where are you getting your information for numbers?
The numbers are past census as updated by the Office of Financial Management out of the state of Washington, and they're reported as precinct populations for our voting precincts in the county.
There you go. That's why we should wait for the new census. We've got 10 years to do it in. We've only been out a little bit over 4, so let's don't get in a big hurry here. There should be no big hurry to redistrict this thing before the filing date. Thank you.
Matt Beaton, I'm your county auditor. I appreciate the tone this week versus last week. I've had a number of people contact me, and as you guys are aware, I sent you the email and the referral last week in the testimony, and I have it. There was some assertion about 10%, and we shall redistrict. It's good to know after asking them that's not in law. I want to bring up that if there's not a hurry, the people that have contacted me, the importance, and I want to read this in. This is from the Brennan Center for Justice. When there's issues on this, people want, they come to me to talk about it. So it essentially says a redistricting process that is sufficiently accountable to the voters must be open, transparent, allow public engagement and time for the public to provide feedback for proposed redistricting plan. An open and transparent redistricting process can help ensure the public servants are elected who actually serve the citizens. Sunlight will inspire confidence in the redistricting process and the outcome recognized as fair. That being said, I know, Bob, you and I had an informal discussion downstairs, and in the past, you have supported a minimum of 30 days. In fact, I think you worked on a law that, unfortunately, it sounds like it didn't get passed. Is that the case?
2 weeks.
Is that what you were looking for, 2 weeks?
That for 30 days.
Right, and that's
10 years ago, but it ended up in 14 days prior
Right.
to filing.
Okay, and that's why I just want to bring that up, because I was caught off guard about the informal discussion last week, having talked with you and realizing that, that you at that time sounded like when you were in support of the 30 days that, it would leave sufficient time for this process. And we've known about this. It's kind of been out circling since January. We know people have looked for these OFM numbers. I think we asked about those too, relying on the numbers. We can rely on the OFM numbers. It's preferred. We're compelled to do it after the census as well. But from my perspective, and as the auditor and running the elections, I was involved with the district-only plan that came in effect here for Pasco, and so people have come to me and shared. I appreciate the fact there's interest in this rebalancing, and it needs to be done. But for me, the biggest piece is this, is the notion of it's the process that we use to make sure everyone buys in. So, thank you.
I want to share a couple of thoughts on this topic since we've had a couple of comments on it. There was discussion last week about 10%, and I don't recall off the top of my head whether or not the word shall and 10% was connected. Whether it was or not, RCW 3632020, the Board of County Commissioners of each county shall divide their county into 3 commissioner districts so that each district shall comprise as nearly as possible 1/3 of the population of the county. That's the reference to shall. It's in there twice. No, it does not say 10%, and if I or anyone else said that there's a 10% threshold that is mandatory, then we misspoke. The 10% is a standard that I think historically has been used, and if you were to take the plain language that it shall be divided into 3 districts that shall comprise as nearly as possible 1/3 of the population, I think reasonable people could agree that when you get to a 10% threshold, which I believe this county historically has held informally as a standard, is enough that you're no longer as nearly as possible 1/3 of the population. But again, if there was a hard correlation referred to in statute between the shall and the 10%, that is not accurate. The shall is that they shall be as nearly as possible 1/3 of the population.
I appreciate that.
You can take that for whatever percentage you want.
I appreciate that, and I do believe we do need to look into that. I mean, we do need to comply, obviously.
Sure.
I did re-listen to it, and there was a sense of urgency last week. I mean, I have the recording if if you don't recollect, and the point is that in addition to complying with that law, I think the most important component, especially given the city of Pasco and that interest, is that if this is going to be done, that it be done, based on that part I read into the record, which is it's really important to have the transparency and have the feedback.
Now, what was the source again for what you read?
It's the Brennan Center for Justice. The title of it is Redistricting and Transparency, Recommendations for Redistricting Authority and Community Organizations.
And the Brennan Center,
for Justice?
Yeah, I'm not personally familiar with that. Is that a Washington State organization?
No, this is national, and there's a lot of interest, obviously, in the elections community. I believe this may well have come out during the last census. A lot of people feel passionately about this issue and the way the lines are drawn. And so, there is an important component, I think. There's a lot of ideas, and it sounds like you have already drafted some ideas for consideration. I think it's important, if there's any suggestion of a wholesale change in lines, that we in the elections process hear about it. And so I'm here on behalf of that to say, if we're going to make big line changes, we really need to have a very purposeful, advertised process that encourages folks to come in and weigh in and own what comes out of the districts in their community. So thank you.
And I'll offer that the statutes also make that requirement, and I'm quite certain you will see the board, if the board decides to pursue the matter, I'm quite certain that you'll see us follow the statutes scrupulously. I don't think we have a history of sidestepping statutes. On the contrary, I think we're pretty careful about them.
Hi, Brenda. Hi.
Hi, Brenda.
Commissioners, I just have one little story to tell you. When I was young, one of the most fun things I liked to do was play a little trick on my sisters. I'd go in their room and I'd short sheet their sheets so that when they'd get into bed, they'd only go halfway in, and so they had to get out and remake their bed. And I'm thinking, if we do something without the public's full knowledge and have an opportunity for people to say what they want to say, that's exactly what we're going to do to the voters that were in the one that is changing, because they think right now that they have certain rights to vote for certain people right now, and if it happens before the elections where people can go in and sign up for elections, then they are going to feel short-sheeted. So I would just ask that you consider that when you're, talking about this issue of redistricting. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Again, I would encourage any of you who have not to give some time to reading Senate Bill 6002, which is, I think, effective July of this year, will become the law for the state of Washington, and it bears directly on this issue. The board not only has an interest, but is in charge with looking at these issues in a broad perspective. The RCWs, the Washington Administrative Code, new laws and what their implications are, looking at recent history with cities both inside our county and nearby, because not only does the plain language of the statutes give us direction, but the intent of the legislature is also pretty clear in those actions. I believe if you read this new law, you will get a better sense and a better understanding of why the board may have a more keen interest than usual in this particular topic. So again, I recommend it to your reading.
Could you reiterate when that law takes effect?
Yeah, I think it's
July.
120 days after the governor's signature, which is likely probably July of this year.
There you go. It's not law yet.
Well, Mr. Didier, please understand that I'm not suggesting that we should or should not do something because this law compels us to, but because this is the expressed intent of the state legislature. And so since we have the benefit of the document, it's been signed by the governor, it's not going to change come July 18th.
No,
so
but it's not law yet.
Very well.
Okay, we're going to be watching, Brad. We're coming.
Okay, any other public comments at this time? Morning, Sheriff Raymond.
Good morning. I stand in front of you with a employee problem that, for lack of better words, I've been doing battle with Human Resources and your county administrator. I've also notified the prosecutor on what's going on, and somehow today, after you're done with the public and they can have time to speak on that, you can discuss whether you want to take it in an executive session or if we want to do it in a public forum.
Okay.
But I have an issue, and we're going to have to figure out how to get it resolved.
Do you wish to do it in executive session or open session?
Well, I'm going to defer to our prosecutor with what he believes should happen with it being this an employee issue. I have no problem with it being in public. It's going to be lengthy though.
Okay. Well, I don't know the subject or the content, so it's hard for me to have an opinion, but maybe we can hold that at the end of the meeting and we can decide at that time.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any other public comment? We're going to have another opportunity at the end of the meeting. All right, seeing that, we'll move on to office business.
Chairman, we have two vouchers in front of us this morning. The first one is fund expenditures, 6 miscellaneous items, current expense, county roads, motor vehicle, etc. The bottom line is $534,917.06. Keith has looked at them, and Mr. Beaton and Mrs. Stein.
Okay, and I'll second the motion for approval of fund expenditures as presented. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Second and final is fund expenditures for county roads and motor vehicle payroll in the amount of $107,536.63. That is signed along with Road.
Okay, and I'll second the motion for approval of county road and motor vehicle expenses as moved by Commissioner Cook. Any other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those are approved as well.
With that, I would move for approval of the consent agenda 1 through 3 as presented.
Okay, second the motion for approval of the consent, 3 items, appraisers collective bargaining agreement, dispatch consolidation, and Spanish interpreter services. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Consent agenda is approved. We'll go with, there's only 3 of these, Keith. I think we'll go ahead and sign them before we move on. Okay. Keith, you want to go ahead with administrative office business?
Certainly. Thank you. First item for you this morning is consideration of a grant request from the Franklin County Historical Museum out of our historical preservation funds, or supplemental preservation funds, which, as you are aware, is monies collected to preserve historical materials in the county. This is a conversation that began last fall with representatives from the Historical Society and the museum to specifically preserve, store, and display, and document and catalog a number of items that they have in the museum to make those things available for research as well as display for the public and to complete some of their education mission for Franklin County history. The amount of the request is $9,844.65. There was information in the read-ahead that demonstrated the proposal of what they intend to do and how they intend to spend those funds. The resolution would require them to document those purchases, make sure they provide us an accounting of what they have spent, and after having reviewed that myself and discussions with the Historical Society, I feel like this is an appropriate use of those historical funds. This is a good step for not only the museum and the society, but for Franklin County. So we ask your consideration of this awarding of these funds to them.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cook?
I have no questions. I know we've done this in the past years ago with that revenue that we collect through the recording fees is designed for that function. So we have documented what they want to use it for pretty clearly. It's all within the realm of the use of that revenue.
I concur with everything you just said. What I was looking for here is that, if memory serves, we established an agreement, essentially a contract through the prosecutor's office the last time we did one of these, which, if memory serves, was a contribution to the restoration of the historical control tower out at the airport. And so perhaps I'm missing it, Keith. I'm not seeing anything in this documentation that shows that the PA's civil attorney has reviewed or signed off on any of this.
That's probably accurate.
Probably should have caught that the other day when I went through these, but
because it's an RCW and that revenue was designed for that reason.
Yeah, we went to the trouble of an agreement last time because it created obligations on both sides. Mr. Sant, you or anybody from your office have any thoughts on this? Do you recall the last one we did, Jen? Now let's see. Yeah, there was a lot of interest out of the prosecutor's office in making sure we had an agreement. I'm not opposed to approving this one and moving it through because the resolution does state that it's pursuant to, and specifically says that they shall use the funds under RCW 2734-27 and 2748-10. So I'll accept that as sufficiently binding, but Keith, maybe we can take a look at using that agreement that we have established. If you don't have a copy, I think I do. All right. I'm sorry, Commissioner Cook, did you motion for approval of this?
I have not seen the number.
Okay.
With that discussion, I would move for approval of Resolution 2018-104, interagency agreement with Franklin County Historical Society, providing funds to promote historical preservation and historical programs at Franklin County Museum.
Okay, second. All in favor? Aye.
Next item on the agenda, Commissioners, was a request from the Superior Court judges to spend some time discussing a request for legal fees. I received some email communication yesterday that they are not ready to move forward with that discussion, and so they've asked us to pull that item and continue that for a future meeting.
Okay, we've got item B, the joint letter of support.
Yes, there is a joint letter of support that has been drafted for your review that speaks to our desire to support the effort to reconvey Rivershore property back to the local communities that is currently under the administration of Army Corps of Engineers. We've had a few discussions on that issue in the past. We've submitted some other letters, but there's some legislation proposing that, and this letter is a representation of our support for the local communities to encourage that legislation to be passed.
This letter has got a multi-jurisdictional signature block. It has Chairman of the Benton County Commissioners, Chairman of the Franklin County Commissioners, and the mayors of Kennewick, Pasco, Richland, and West Richland. So Commissioner Cook, if you're inclined to have us sign this, and I would recommend that we do, a motion to authorize the chair to sign on behalf of the county would be appropriate.
Mr. Chairman, that would be affirmative with joint letter support of the Rochelle reconveyance and allow the chairman to sign the letter addressed to Senator Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell and Representative Van Newhouse.
Okay, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think it's ready to move forward. Okay, I understand that item C has been held for a future date. We've got an advertised executive session, matters relating to litigation or pending litigation. I'm going to assume that this is different than the issue that Sheriff Raymond has raised. So we have potentially 2 executive sessions.
If I may, Commissioner,
please.
I think the discussion the sheriff raised could be held in a public setting. If you prefer to do that in executive session, you can. I'm ready to move forward with the discussion because it's going to probably require action of the board.
Yeah, I'm not aware of what the topic or the details are, so I can't offer an opinion one way or the other. Commissioner Cook, do you have more insight?
Doesn't sound like the sheriff's concerned about open session.
Commissioner Sant, do you have, Mr. Sant, do you have a preference one way or the other?
Well, actually, just pulling up the statute, under the statute that's referenced, section 4230110, subset G appears that this would be an open session discussion.
Okay.
Unless there's something specific as to a particular employee that would require executive session because of, a personnel issue or some other matter that would be more private based on the employee's specific action. But if it's a matter of addressing wages, salary, it's very specific that salaries, wages, other issues that generally apply to the agency shall occur meeting open to the public. So I think our tendency is to have those in open meeting unless there's a specific reason why we need to go into the executive session.
Okay, so
That's fine, except for that, just so you know. I have.
Just so you know.
No, hold on.
No.
I'm first. Just so you know.
You're out of order, Sheriff. I'm the chairman. I've got the floor for a minute. All right?
I think that you might want to call this an executive session.
Well, I want to get a clarification before you say anything.
I've asked that I be assigned an attorney over this topic.
Sheriff Raymond?
And that's where we're sitting with this. Sheriff Raymond. Say just a minute.
You're going to have an opportunity to have your say. And if you really insist on continuing to talk, go ahead. But if you move into ground that gets you into trouble.
I'm not worried about getting.
Okay. All right. Good. Carly, am I correct that if we do this in open session, we're compliant with the law, and everything we're doing is appropriate? The danger area, the thing we want to stay away from, is naming one or more individual employees or talking about the specific circumstances of an employee by name, right? If we avoid that area, we're okay, right? So far as you know?
I believe so. I'm not an attorney. My understanding of the issue is that it does not delve into the performance of a public employee, which is what would be covered under this.
And that's why I wanted to hold off with Sheriff Raymond, because if we start talking about an individual, then we bring liability on the county. We end up in a lawsuit from that individual. I had no idea where you were going, and that's why I wanted to stop you before you went any further. So with all of that, I'm fine doing it in open session, so long as the prosecutor and the HR and the county administrator don't have any objection. So this is your opportunity. If anybody's got an objection or concern why we shouldn't do this in open session, I'm happy to do it that way. All right, good. Let's do it.
All right, in order to get to the topic, it's going to take a little bit of history. Of course, I was elected to my senior office in 2015 with a pending federal lawsuit against the Franklin County Jail. During that time,
the decision was made to place the jail and its operations under the Office of Sheriff by the commissioners. Okay? And that was fine. And during the settlement of the lawsuit, the commissioners and myself agreed to place a lieutenant, the rank of lieutenant, in the jail as a second lieutenant position within the jail under the operation of the Office of the Sheriff. And that was done. And at the time, the lieutenant was actually paid more than a sergeant within the rank. They were paid administrative wages, law enforcement, police administrative wages for those positions. Since that time, it is a appointed and or at-will job, or you can call it whatever you want. I get to decide who gets to go in there and make that placement because it's a law enforcement function. I have recently replaced that lieutenant position with a road deputy, and prior to that, a sergeant was in there and held that rank, administrative rank, and has since returned to patrol and just took a $6,000 raise for essentially taking a demotion and going back to the patrol side of the sheriff's office. So because of the circumstances of that, I have appointed a deputy, a road deputy, and negotiated with him to take that position that has anywhere from 25 plus years of law enforcement experience to include corrections, being the chief of police of a city, et cetera, and have moved him into that appointed position. And during that, we had a discussion that he at least needed to be paid the top step pay of that position, and I said, okay, we need to do that operationally.
Sheriff, do you mind if I just ask a question here?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the general public can ascertain exactly who you're speaking about by virtue of the fact that these are a limited number of positions?
I don't think it's too hard to figure out.
Okay, I just want to have that on the record because I've already cautioned about what happens if we start identifying people, and you can do that other ways than by name. So I just want to offer that thought.
Anybody.
Okay.
I'm talking about lieutenants and sergeants' positions.
I'm just sharing that caution.
As we moved into that position, appointed by, because it's an at-will position, I prepared a PF, a personal action form, for him to be at $86,544, which is a top step in that position as of today. And that line item to cover that. I prepared the PAF in early March, signed it, and forwarded it. Well, yesterday, I get notified that, no, you can't do that. You have to go in front of the board for their authorization and so on and so on. And I said, well, I'm not doing that. I signed a PAF, notified people well ahead of time that this person was going to take this position and this is what he was going to be at. And I signed the PAF and I forwarded it. I walked it over to the Human Resources to make sure it was going through. Never heard anything until now. For 2 weeks, and now all of a sudden my understanding is that today the PAF has been completed and forwarded to the auditor's office without my signature, saying that he's going to be at a step 5, which is essentially about $2,000 more, I believe, that he was making as a road deputy. This is cumbersome for law enforcement operations. This is one of those trying to fit a square peg in a round hole and drive it through again. This is one of my appointments, and there's going to be argument, I believe, from the county that I'm one appointment over. And I'm okay with that. If the county wants to take those actions and say one appointment over, then I'll take him and move it back to the road, and we'll be in compliance with the court order. It's just as simple as that. I'm growing tired and weary of having to say mother may I every time I try to make a management adjustment within the sheriff's office, and it's a net zero cost to anybody sitting at this table for now, because we have other topics that I have discussed reference to that command structure, law enforcement command structure, and being problems upside down in wages and benefits. But that's for another day. So there's where we're at. This person that I appointed, that I said, yeah, we'll get paid this under his my appointment, and I am not asking anybody for any more money or anything else to make that appointment. And now, for lack of better words, I got to be honest with you, I feel like roadblock for something that I need to do as the police administrator of this county and the decisions that need to be made for law enforcement functions. And I just simply don't believe it's not everybody's wheelhouse to tell me what I'm going to pay the people that I appoint when I will, so long as I stay within the guidelines that the commissioners have set money-wise, and it's not out of those lines.
Sheriff Raymond has not made any requests to the board, so I guess go ahead.
Yeah, I don't entirely disagree with the sheriff. I would characterize this as a long-standing policy that the board has maintained, that step increases above certain requirements require action of the board. I don't disagree with the individual's qualifications, support what the sheriff is trying to do. I have no desire to try to tell him to hire or to appoint for these positions. To me, it's simply a question of long-standing policy that we've required elected officials to come before the board if they want to grant steps above the standard when someone's put into a position. This individual qualified as step 5, the sheriff wants him at step 7. As I said, I don't think that's out of line or appropriate. Probably I looked at it, supported it, but we believe that the board needs to focus on the personal actions on the
So am I right that that's the whole issue? Nobody has an issue with it being a 7 versus a 5. Sheriff just doesn't want to do the process.
Sheriff did the process. Sheriff sent the PAF over 6 weeks ago before the start of this.
So the complaint is that it hasn't been handled in a timely manner. That's the complaint.
That's correct, in essence. But I don't want to get to a point that every time I'm moving my command structure around for law enforcement operations or for public safety issues, that I've got to come up with may-I. So long as I'm staying within those boundaries, I should be able to do exactly what I see fit, what's best for public safety and for the operations of the sheriff's office. And I'm not stepping out of anybody's lines or bounds of money.
Those boundaries now?
I am, yeah. And I submitted the PAF long ago. Yeah. And here we are with this employee, my employee, especially agreed upon the ways that we talked about that I submitted well ahead of time for today with a PAF change that was forced to a step 5 without my signature on it. That's problematic in my world.
So the boundaries, as you understand them, allow you to assign whatever grade you want to, or whatever step you want to an individual in position?
I think the boundaries are that this is an appointed position by the office of sheriff. Okay, that there is a line item that's established by the Board of Commission that is currently at $86,544, and that's what I brought this person in at $86,444. I did not step over anybody's boundaries or authorities by doing that, and I submitted the PAF in a timely manner.
That position that the individual was appointed into, did it have an established step and grade?
Yeah, it has. You put into the Hay study step, whatever that thing is that you all try to do.
Do you know offhand?
No, a Carly can tell you. Right.
All right.
Was the grade assigned in that position when it was created?
And so the practice, and I use that word on purpose because there's a difference between practice and a written policy sometimes. The practice has been that if somebody's coming into a newly created or newly assigned position, they come in at the entry step unless the board authorizes a different step. And we historically have done that when it was someone whose experience level clearly exceeded what the entry-level step was. We've done that in Public Works, for example, a number of times. But those have come before the board. So the question, which I think is really on point here, is are we talking about a written county policy or just a long-standing practice?
It's the policy, the salary administration policy.
Okay, so the salary administration policy says, according to HR, that if you want to put somebody into a newly appointed or created position, anything other than the entry-level step, you come to the board and we sign off on it. It's clear you don't think it should be that way.
No, I don't, because it is my prerogative to appoint into those positions as it stands today. It's also ordered by a federal court that position be there. And if I appoint somebody at will, then they're mine to negotiate those things with and come up with those agreements. And so long as I don't go outside of the boundaries of this, whatever the commission has put in there for money, without altering that, I believe that I have the right and the ability to do that as the elected sheriff, appointing my command staff in my law enforcement positions that are administrative command staff.
Okay.
Right. And that's all I did. No one has to go outside of any boundaries of anybody's lines, and I don't believe that I have to come to this board to ask for permission to set where it is that I'm going to put my at-will or my command staff positions out. So long as I stay in the boundaries or the box that you have drilled in as a commission, and I'm staying within that boundary.
So where are the funds coming from to pay this higher step?
They're already in the budget.
Every position that you have is authorized for a certain dollar amount.
Right.
If you increase the dollar amount for a position, or you create a new position, to stay within your financial authority, you've got to reduce one somewhere else. So which one do you have to reduce?
No, I don't. I'm taking one employee from that position and moving them back on the sheriff's office side into a position already.
You vacated one position to move to another one.
I have then went down to the sheriff's office side because to be quite honest, you ain't going to get anybody to work for $84,000.
I'm not talking about numbers of bodies.
So I'm balancing the numbers. No any positions or adding any money. I'm simply moving one position to another position. What are you talking?
If you move a person from one position, I'll use fictitious numbers to make the math easy, that's getting paid $50,000 a year, and you move them to a position over here where they're making $75,000 a year, there's $25,000 of personnel budget authority that needs to come from somewhere else. So I'm just asking, what position did you reduce by $25,000? Because to stay within your budget authority, that's necessary.
I'm not reducing anything.
Okay.
I'm staying status quo. I'm taking from here to here.
There's numbers of bodies and numbers of positions, but the dollars are a different matter.
Sure, go ahead.
Didn't you, when you moved the individual back to the deputy position, they took a pay cut? Isn't that the difference?
No, actually. The deputy that was in that position? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
No, he actually took a pay raise going back to a lower position.
So,
because this is an exempt at-will position that is independently stands alone of everything, and there is the money there to do that. So no one's taking a loss. I'm not asking for any additional money.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. In the time that we've been working together, me as a commissioner, you as a sheriff. If you found me to be mildly, moderately, strongly supportive of your
This isn't a question about support. I believe fully that you all are very supportive of the sheriff's office and its functions. I don't argue that.
I think the record shows that we've bent over backward. Here's my concern. On at least one other occasion, there was appearance that we were funding new positions, new assignments, by using dollars that were assigned to vacant positions.
No, I'm not following you.
Yeah, it was about 4 meetings back.
You're talking about when we moved an individual back into the sheriff's side of things? Is that what he's talking about?
So,
yeah.
So what I'm saying is,
your question is yes. There was a $6,000 difference between those two, yes. And that's what that burden's on the sheriff's budget side of the office right now, not on the correction side where we're placing this person. Yeah. That money is there in that line item, and there is no change.
That's the part I'm having a little trouble understanding. If we're dealing with the same line item and the same grade, but
we're not dealing with the same line item and the same grade.
Okay. So if we've got 2 line items, each having its own grade and step, and let's just call them A and B, and the person's going from A to B, and the grade and step for B has a higher dollar amount than the one for A, where did those extra dollars come from? That's what our responsibility and interest is.
Right. Right. And you already took care of that 4 meetings ago when we moved that civil service protected sergeant back to his last rank by civil service, and you all created a 5th sergeant supervisory position. That's over there. Nothing happened over here. Yeah. Nothing happened with this lieutenant position. It is still essentially an administratively law enforcement vacant position until I figure out how to fill it. Sure. And nothing from here went to there. We're not transferring any money anywhere. We're just placing that lieutenant that I appointed in that position at that wage by PAF back into that vacant position that has the money in it. That's it. There's nothing more to that.
So I think we're at a disadvantage. The board is not having seen this in advance and been able to look at the documentation and look at it. So I don't know there's much else that I can say about it right now. Are you asking the board to take any action today?
No, I'm not asking the board to take any action. I'm meeting with the prosecutor's office to try to see if I can get some sort of legal advice outside of here in order to address this if it's not taken care of. The bottom line is the money's there. I've made the decision to put this person in there at that wage that I submitted to PAF for well before now.
And you went ahead and made the change before the PAF.
I took the PAF at least 3 weeks before.
I'm not arguing it was timely. I'm just trying to get the facts.
I appointed this officer in that position as a lieutenant.
Okay.
If I may, I would like to take at least action on this individual personnel action from today. There's probably 2 issues. There's the larger issue that could be deferred to the sheriff discussing with legal counsel, whether he's required to bring these items before the court or not. Separate that from the particular personnel action. I don't want this employee affected. His expectation right now is to be compensated at step 7.
Well, I appreciate that. That's why I 3 times asked. Are you asking for action?
I would request that action be taken today.
There's the step. There's the transfer.
I want to see that too. See if my signature's on that and what it is. I still want to see it.
This is just submitted today.
March the 20th, it was submitted.
Originally submitted before, but that's the current one.
And my signature's on that?
Looks like it.
We sent it to him.
410, just a second.
Okay.
Just so you know, I have the personnel action form that I created right here with a March 20th date on it, so that there's no disparity of when I submitted that for the process. So I don't know.
Is this your signature? That's what I need to know.
I don't feel it as an impression. That's why I'm out. I'll let it go again.
You don't think you signed that?
I'm just telling you that I have a PAF that I completed myself with a date of March 20th on it, 2018.
I got that. I'm just asking, did you sign that one?
Feels like an impression of one. Yep.
This is dated today. No, it's date submitted.
All the dates on it are today.
Yeah, all the dates are today.
This should show it's effective April 1st.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Effectively, I'm just
that's true.
confused.
The one that I didn't sign said effective April 1st.
It's dated today, it's got your signature on it.
Submitted March 20th. Just so everybody knows.
Well, I know, I'm just a little confused. You don't remember signing this one? I mean,
This one? With that date on it? This one. Yeah, I'm not quite sure if that's just...
Because this would have been signed today.
That's my signature.
Okay.
Not arguing that with you. I'm just saying that I did not submit it on that date.
You signed this one today.
This was submitted that March 20th. No, I didn't sign that today. I did not sign that today.
When did the signature come in, Carly?
That form came in while I was sitting in this meeting. Eric brought it.
Well, I'm looking at your signature as dated 4/10.
Okay.
That's why I'm confused.
So everybody understands, when I was told by the auditor's office that HR and the county administrator's office submitted a form, step 5, not this step, submitted a form and that he was going to be paid at step 5. And I said, no, because I haven't signed nor authorized for that to be done on the PAF. This form here that I did sign, I said, go ahead and print another PAF and sign it and forward it. I didn't know that they'd already got it to you all. And forward it back to you after we're done today. This wasn't meant to come here today, but that's fine. I'm with you now. This is so that there's an understanding this was created today and signed by myself and the commander back at the same step that this one wasn't approved.
Yeah, I'm
There you go.
100% on board. The only part I wasn't
Yeah.
sure about is when you said you didn't know if this was your signature and it was signed today.
That was my signature. I can feel the impression of it on my signature.
Okay. All right. So everybody's on the same page now? No pun intended?
Yeah.
And
There
just,
was no forewarning that was changed up until auditors called you.
I was notified by one of our staff that the auditors had said that he would be paid at step 5 starting today. And I said, well, okay, show me the PF where I said it was okay.
Yeah.
Or instead of step 5.
I'm curious. I think this is where Commissioner Cook was going.
Right.
Because when did you learn that?
This morning,
So you didn't know till this morning that
but the announcement said step 5. The auditor said, I want to see it. So soon as we did that I did. Right after all this started, I says, we're just going to resubmit it again.
Sure.
For another time, another date, but that's the agreed upon what I hired that at-will employee at, right there.
Well, it bothers me the fact that it was that other one you sent in 20 days ago, and all of a sudden they counteracted it with no board discussion.
There was extensive discussion yesterday between HR and the sheriff and the county administrator regarding that and the authority within the policy and what could be processed. And I had asked for a new PAF to bring to the board to follow the policy and to get that approval for what the sheriff was asking. There was never a no, you can't do that. There was, this is the process. I'd be happy to take it for you. Send me this form. And
I declined.
Was communication.
And I declined.
That what we could process within the policy, and the response was do it. And we
Sure. Was there a form with a step 5 sent to the auditor's office?
I'm not aware of that. I will look into that. I know what we processed in the system was a step 5, which is what the sheriff was authorized under the policy to pay, and what we wanted to make sure at least got paid while this all got worked out. Otherwise, he would have had no increase.
Okay.
Keith?
All right. I think we got the picture now.
Sign it.
Do we do these by motion? It has to be a motion in a second. Vote.
I need to move for approval. Chairman's signature on the in front of us.
Okay, I'll second the motion for approval of the Franklin County Personnel Action Form as presented. This is for a corrections position from going to a grade S18 step 7.
My largest concern is that you did not know about this a long time ago. That all of a sudden was told you was going to get paid step 5. And I think that should have come by you a long time ago, not just through the auditor's office.
Well, I think that was done yesterday under the circumstances that she's explaining. I wasn't notified of that, just so you know. I mean, I have all the emails that went back and forth and have all of them in line.
Mr. Commissioner, if I may, just to have an understanding of the process.
If you can hold off 1 second, please. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, go ahead.
The sheriff is correct. The personnel action form was submitted a couple of weeks ago. It was submitted outside of the scope of authority granted to the sheriff under the county policy. Our jobs end up being the gatekeepers of that, and unfortunately, sometimes we have to, go contrary to what the desire of the elected is. In this case, there was a training gap in my office. The person who originally processed it through, not realizing that the sheriff was submitting something outside the scope of his stated authority under county policy. We caught the error in our internal audit process, and that's when it happened. It was actually identified Thursday of last week. I was out of the office, the sheriff was out of the office. My staff wanted to verify with me that there wasn't some other circumstance or authority that they were unaware of. They knew the sheriff was out as well. As soon as we were both back in the office on Monday, yesterday, notification was sent to the sheriff, and we processed what we could in compliance with the policy and took the necessary steps to try to get it resolved. So,
and you created a new form with an S18 step 7.
I requested a new form to bring to the board for approval. As of coming to this meeting today, I wasn't sure I was going to get that form, so I had given the previous form to Keith to present to the board to get some kind of authorization, because again, we all supported this move. It's just that we're doing our jobs so that taxpayers pay us to do, which is to make sure that all of our pay actions are compliant with county policy.
And I have no angst with that, but I'm still going to sit here and contend, if I make an appointment, that's within my scope and my authority, so long as I keep it within the budgetary guidelines that have been set. We are.
We're going to find out the
answer to that.
Because it impacts a whole bunch of people, knowing what's correct, and obviously we're going to do what.
I just don't believe the county commissioners nor the county can tell me who it is I appoint and where I put them within my administrative command structure, police, law enforcement, consent structure.
I'm inclined to agree with you on that point.
I'm going to submit PAS, which range that I'm trying to fit into that box. Usually, to be quite honest with you, at the top step. Now, if you all want to say, no, you can or can't, then we'll go there. But I don't know why we would.
I'm inclined to agree with you on your first point.
Yeah.
I think where we might differ is the interpretation of the board's authority and responsibility for the fiscal matters.
I'm not arguing physical matters.
And when you make changes in staffing that impact the finances of the county, I think that authority does come back to the board. But let's find out.
Didn't impact the finances of the county.
Let's find out.
Let's do it.
Okay, good. Sounds good. You got what you need for today?
Good for today. We'll see you next week.
Okay. Always welcome back. All right. Let's see. We've got an executive session scheduled. We still need that?
Yes, sir. I would like to request an executive session up to 30 minutes under RCW 42.30.110, paragraph 1, subparagraph I, to discuss the legal counsel matters relating to litigation or pending litigation. I do not expect action or to be taken after that. You know, you have an additional public comment period, and we wish to hold that first.
No, let's go ahead and clear out the room. Who do you need for
I
this executive session?
request that Sean Sant and Jennifer Johnson be participating with the board, clerk, and myself.
Last 30 minutes, we got a meeting to get to.
Yeah, I can make this quick. Excuse me, folks, we are on a tight schedule, and we've got an executive session pending, so we need to clear the room and move ahead. Yeah, so it's 10:57, we'll go into executive session at this time for the reasons stated, up to 30 minutes. Okay, it is approximately 11:28. We've completed our executive session. We used the full 30 minutes. There's no action required or requested of the board at this point. Next item on the agenda is public comment. There's no one else in the room but us, so public comment is not possible. And we are on a tight schedule today to get to a Ben Franklin Council Executive Board, so unless there's other business, we are adjourned.
Hi, how are you?
Good.